Okay, we're here with Kim Franklin. She's running for Montgomery County Constable Precinct 1. I'm John Wirtz, and I'm here with Ken Vaughn and Dell Fessenden. And I will turn it over to Kim with her opening.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. My name is Kim Franklin, and I'm a candidate for Constable Precinct 1. I was raised in Montgomery County, born in Montgomery County, raised primarily in the Willis area. I started my law enforcement career. I graduated from Willis High School in 1988, and then I started my law enforcement career 23 years ago. When I first graduated from the police academy, I went to work for the city of Oak Ridge North, and I was a patrol officer there for 5 years. Then I went over to the Precinct 3 Constable's office under Tim Hollyfield and worked there for 14 years. Throughout that 14 years at the Constable's office, I started out as a deputy serving civil process and basic patrol functions, and then I graduated through the ranks to a sergeant in 2001, lieutenant in 2006, and then finally captain in 2009. And during that 14 years at the Constable's office, 14 years is a long time to learn a lot of stuff. And luckily for me at the time, I didn't realize that everything I was doing would eventually lead to me having the skills and the knowledge that could move me forward. That wasn't the plan. I just wanted to learn all of the roles that the constable did. And so I was able to either supervise, oversee, or actually physically work every division, including civil division, criminal investigations division, the motorist assistance program, patrol division, and then handle all the administrative issues. We did, of course, budgets and internal affairs, disciplinary matters, things like that. So I was able to get my feet wet in every aspect of that office and actually learn and experience everything from that, which was, like I said at the time, I didn't realize it. I thought I was just overwhelmed with a lot of work, but now I can really appreciate it. And I left there when Constable Gable came in. He brought in his new administration in August of 2012, and I stayed on there. He was kind enough to put me in a position of a deputy because anytime a new administration comes in, they bring in their top tiers, which is captains and above. And he kept me on as a deputy, and in December I left and went over to work for Brett Ligon at the district attorney's office. And that's where I'm at now, and I'm a criminal investigator with the felony division there. And I'm married. I have 4 kids. I have, like I said, I've been immersed in my community my entire life. In different aspects. I mean, there's I guess I've experienced a lot in the 23 years in law enforcement, obviously. As far as the reason that I'm running for constable, I know a lot of people are going, why all of a sudden did you just jump into this race? I can assure you it was not an overnight decision. It wasn't something that I just woke up on December 14th and said, I'm going to go file for constable. It's actually been in the works for several months. And just there were some different areas that we were trying to work out some special things in. And then strategically we decided to wait until the last day to file and take that wow impact and put it out there. So some things it may have worked, some things you should have started sooner, so we'll see. Like I said, I didn't just start off with just 2 people and say I'm going to go file. I have a great base support group and people working on my behalf and things like that. So I hope that when we're done with this interview, you see that I feel like I'm not just me feel like I'm the most qualified, but you actually see that I have the skills, the qualifications, the strength to move this office forward in the next 4 years.
Okay, great, thank you. From the questionnaire on number 3 and 4, you had alluded to some of the negativity surrounding the department right now. Can you allude to that, and what's that from, and how do you plan to improve on that?
Well, I think I know for a fact not only is the confidence lost trust in that, the community lost trust in that office, but the confidence, the morale of the officers that work there. I've talked to several. They do not feel that they have strong leadership. They don't feel that they have standards and practices in place that they can come to work every day and know what's expected and know when they don't meet those expectations, their accountability, they're not held accountable. It's more of the good old boy system of who's your friend today and who's mad at you tomorrow. And if there's not a good strong base of morale and confidence with the employees of the office, there's no way that the community can have trust in that office. And I think a lot of I think Chumley is a super great guy. I think that he started out there strong and started to build that department up. But I think after so many years of being a career politician, you tend to get lackadaisical in how you handle, and it turns into more of who's my friend today or who am I related to. Shouldn't be about that. That office should have service or should provide service to the community at the highest levels every day and not just one day a week. Or I had a perfect example of that. I had a phone call yesterday that an emergency room doctor who works nights, she came home from work and had a flyer on her door from Precinct 1 saying that she had civil paper that they were trying to serve her, and of course she wasn't at home. They left her a note. So she calls the office when she found it and said, can I come by and pick it up? And someone bring it by to me. And they said, we don't have anyone in the office today to serve it. And how a constable's office can go an entire day without having an officer available to serve civil process is unbelievable to me. So it's things like that, and I think that's where some of the confidence is lost.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was trying to
No,
look at the edge. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, you might want to turn it a little bit.
So recently there was a video of one of the tasks that Precinct 1 has is policing the schools in Willis. And there's a video of a police officer in some other state, I believe it was, who got involved in a conflict with a student. It was on a cell phone and wouldn't give it up, and ended up that that's getting turned over and everything, looking really bad. I'm just interested in hearing your comments on that, what the officer may be able to do better so it didn't have such a negative publicity around it, and any comments you might have on that.
Absolutely. I think you're referring to the girl that was in her desk on her cell phone and wouldn't leave when the officer stepped outside. And that's easy. They could have simply, in order to avoid a lot of the negativity around that, there wasn't an immediate threat to the other students. They had time to stop everything, remove all of the other students from the classroom, bring in additional law enforcement, counselors, whatever, to help try to alleviate some of that. I don't really know what the problem was with the girl specifically. I never did actually hear that, but removing all of those students out should have been first and foremost. Not only would that have removed the cell phones from the room, but it would have, because I still would expect an officer to have his body cam on, so there should still be good video, but that could have been turned into a safety issue for the other students in the room. So that should have been the first and foremost thing. Like I said, I don't know what the girl's situation was, but the fact is, when you're, you may have to take the necessary force possible to. I'm not saying, he did everything exactly right, but sometimes you can't just let her sit there. I mean, for 2 days. I mean, it's when it's time to get up and move. It's time to get up and move, and there's some tactical measures to take to have that happen. But first and foremost, those kids should have been moved out of the room, away from that.
Okay.
Okay. There's, of course, as John led in, we've talked to a lot of candidates for the constable's offices. And one of the things that seems to be a recurring theme is, and you mentioned it in your answer to question number 4, I will establish community policing to engage the public. Of course, community policing is not one of the primary roles of the constable, but that seems to be a common theme here. So would you please discuss whether you think the Sheriff's Department is understaffed? Why is that a dominant theme? Why is it part of your plan? And what is the proper approach to that? Should the Sheriff's Office be increased in staff and let the constables do what they're chartered to do, or how does that play out?
Well, I definitely think that the Sheriff's Office is understaffed, and I've seen some of their, how their officers, the number of officers on particular days and things like that. I mean, they're definitely understaffed. Their investigations division's understaffed. They definitely need help. But if you have to work with what you have to work with, you're going to have to make the best of it. And I think that between the Sheriff's Office, as far as community policing isn't something that should be delegated only to the agency that's responding to the calls, or only to the agencies that are it should be a philosophy that's used from law enforcement, no matter what they're charged to do. So even if only the constable served civil process and didn't perform any additional duties, there's still a community policing aspect that would still be expected, in my opinion. I think that they are still there, they are still public servants, they are still there to serve the public, and if they don't have a good relationship with their community or don't get involved with their community, then as far as, serving civil process is a community policing aspect. I mean, you're serving your citizens. So I think that the philosophy of community policing, regardless of how many people that you have, how many officers you have to go out, and you don't task one group to say you're the new community policing proactive division of the office. It should be spread amongst everyone. You do it every day when you're out talking to business owners, when you're in the schools for various reasons. So even if they're only tasked with serving civil process, there's still a community aspect, policing aspect that they need to take into account and utilize and provide.
Okay, so should that be a major emphasis, or?
Absolutely, because I think if the community does not have trust in law enforcement cannot be successful. And I think the only way to do that is to be involved, immersed into our communities with the people that we're serving.
Okay, thank you.
On question number 5, what are the top 3 areas where the budget needs to be adjusted? You mentioned in parts 1 and 2, and 1 is the rank structure, determined salaries appears to be out of date, and then so obviously some adjustment needs to be there, and I would assume up. Is that correct?
Well, what I was referring to in the number 1 answer was basically that if you look at the rank structure, there's 35 officers or sworn people, and I think 11 or 12 of them are supervisors from sergeant up. That's a lot of chiefs leading very few Indians, and I think that if you lessen and you spread the wealth, 1 lieutenant should be able to supervise more than 1 division, or they're not a very effective lieutenant. You shouldn't have to have 5 lieutenants overseeing 10 officers. I'm not sure the numbers, and I'm throwing out some basic numbers here because I just feel like they're top heavy, and that needs to be re-looked at and redefined based on the needs of that agency. And the number 2 part of that, the current personnel, I think that they're not necessarily understaffed by any stretch. I think they have some time management and efficiency issues that could better serve the community without adding additional personnel, without increasing the budget. It's just time management.
How do you do that with, and that was the second part of my question, how do you do that without the need to increase the budget?
Well, and that's just it. I think, like I say, I think some of the officers, some of the leadership that goes down the pipe doesn't require any type of efficiency or time management of their officers. And I think that you don't need to increase the budget and receive additional officers. You need to utilize the officers you have on stand now to get out there and do the work that's expected and share the load a little bit. I think, in fact, I know that there are some officers who come to work every day and run 8 hours straight, and then some that don't do much of anything. And so I think it's an efficiency issue and a supervision issue.
So if they're top heavy, how do you address that? Do you pare that down? Do you pare them back?
You mean as far as like demoting, or getting rid of a position?
Right.
Well, throughout my history in law enforcement, I was always told, if you have 5 lieutenants position, you never give one back to commissioner's court. You never give up a position. And that's to me, that's an egotistical mindset of the guys that want to have the most stuff. You know what I mean? And if we can better our efficiencies to better improve our overall budget and serve the community with less and do more, we're going to do that. I'm not all about, I need the bigger of this and the more of this. That shouldn't even be how we look at things. So I don't have a problem saying, we have too many lieutenants, there's no need. I don't need 5 lieutenants supervising 10 people.
Okay.
What's your position on open carry? There's a new law coming into effect. And then also, what's your position on constitutional carry?
Well, and that's funny that you say that, because we just got a memo out from our office on how we are to respond to that. Now, is that necessarily my opinion on it? No. Or yes, it just depends on how you look at it. But I'm good with open carry. I think that that is a right of the citizens to have that, and we should have had it all along. I think that the community needs to be educated on what that's going to entail, because that's going to be the problem. If my mom sees a guy walking down the street with a gun on his hip, she's going to be calling 911, no matter how much I educate her. But I think overall that the citizens will understand, and I think in Texas, I think that's why you don't see these mass shootings to the extent that you do in other places, because no one wants to go to the place where everybody's got a gun. And the majority, if the bad guy's going to bring a gun, he's usually not going to have it on his hip legally carrying it anyway. He's going to have it hidden, and it's going to be a whole different situation. So yes, I'm definitely for that. I think the constitutional right to carry is that was our right to bear arms. The Second Amendment says that. How it's interpreted through each section of people that look at it is different. My opinion is that we have that right, and I think we should allow the citizens to carry.
Without licensing.
Without licensing.
As in constitutional.
Right, absolutely.
But still with restrictions on purchasing, or?
Absolutely, I do believe the restrictions on purchasing should stay
Okay.
there. I do believe that, but I don't think that any citizen should have to walk outside. If they walk out of their house and drive down the street, if they want to carry their gun, I think they have that right.
Okay.
You said with restrictions?
With restrictions on the purchase.
Oh, okay. And we're still doing a background check.
Correct, yes, I definitely feel that that's necessary. I don't know that that's even being done properly, but if it were to be done properly, I think it would be effective.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it, if they're letting people into the country with and without visas, and then they can't track them.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned a couple questions ago about career politicians and so forth. You've been in law enforcement for 23 years. What is your opinion on, if you will, term limits for elected offices, such as constable? And how do you plan not to become a career politician in the role of constable?
Well, I believe that term limits are not constitutional. I don't believe that we should impose term limits on any elected official or public official. I feel that if a public official is being corrupted in his decisions and not making choices in the best interest of the public, then it's the duty of the public to not elect that person again. That doesn't always happen, I realize that, but I still think that that's the right of the citizens to choose. As far as me personally being a career politician, there's no number. I can't say that there's a certain number of term limits that makes you not a career politician. Is that I'm not so sure if I'm wording that right. But at the same time, I think that once someone is starting to act in their own self-interest and not in the best interest of the citizens, then they become a career politician. And that's something I can assure you that I'm not going to do. I don't plan on working until I'm 90 and be reelected every time. I think right now, I'm not looking at 8 years from now, I'm looking at 4 years from now, what I can do in 4 years. And I would have to do that by each 4-year increment.
Well, I don't know that many elected politicians go in necessarily looking to become career politicians. They probably all start out with as pure motives as you have, and so there has to be a plan to prevent that from happening.
Well, and I agree with you, because like I say, I think that that once the corruption starts, they need to go, but at the same time, I don't think there should be a restriction, because I think that that's the rights of the citizens to choose their government. And if the citizens should be up to date on what is happening and choose not to reelect that person.
We wish.
And I agree totally. It does not happen enough, but.
Okay, John?
Are you, I think we had a question in here. Are you familiar with Agenda 21?
No.
Okay. Okay, so what strong Cities Network, were you aware of that before we brought it to your attention?
Not really, and I can tell you right now, I wouldn't be a fan of it, simply because anything that goes federal turns into a huge, big giant bank account for a bunch of, federal groupies, and I just don't see the need for imposing, and it imposes restrictions on the state at local levels, and I don't agree with those.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Agenda 21's kind of the same thing. It's a global thing.
Just a different version of this one, or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I have to say I wouldn't be a fan of that.
I would say probably Agenda 21 is all encompassing, and this is a part of it.
And I'm all about cooperation and working together with state, local, national. I mean, I think definitely we have to be able to work effectively with each other. The patrol deputy here in Precinct 3 could find something that would be, enormous, and that is a whole other thing, is our ability to communicate with each other. But cooperation amongst all of those is very important, I think, and for the safety of the citizens. But at the same time, I don't want to impose additional regs and things like that from the federal government, so that we are part of their little program that's just a giant bank account for someone to play with.
Which kind of leads into my next question, but I don't know if we have enough time. Maybe Ken will pick it up, and that's going all black.
Cars,
constables, sheriffs, cars, where you can hardly distinguish whether you're dealing with a constable or sheriff or, the feds.
Oh, you're saying like everyone go uniformity in the design of the cars and things?
What are your thoughts about that? Is that good or bad thing?
I can't really, either way, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I do believe that there should be a lot of uniformity just within certain departments. Certain departments have 15 different types of cars, and it's a cost issue when you're trying to change out all of this stuff, so it needs to have some uniformity. Do I necessarily feel that all the agencies should be the same? Not so much, but at the same time, and the reason being is because a lot of times the funding for different things comes from different areas. So if, it may not be that the funding's available to buy everyone the Tahoes that Precinct 3 wants to be driving around in. And if it's a cost issue, or, you don't want to be frivolous with taxpayer money, you don't want to go buy a bunch of Tahoes, and when you could all have Crown Vics, but all of these people on this side of the table don't want to agree to the Crown Vics. So, it's kind of a catch-22. I think it's, I wouldn't have a problem with it either way, but it would take some looking into.
Right. In your answer to one of the questions, it was related to the Constitution, whether it's a living document or a static document. And you said it was a living document. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, and my saying that as a living document is like this. I kind of look at the Bible as a living document. I think it's part of our life yesterday, today, it's going to be a part tomorrow. So it lives in every single generation. Now, how it's interpreted through each generation is the key. But I think that the interpretation should come from the people and not a judge sitting on a bench to make new laws based on what his interpretation of the Constitution is. I think the founding guidelines of our Constitution should stay the same no matter who's interpreting it, and no matter when it's, in the generational times it's being interpreted.
Okay. So something like drones. Is that drones?
Drones?
Is that something that is reasonable to use in police enforcement, and how?
I think that drones are useful in police and law enforcement, definitely. I think that they can provide a great service. And when I say that, there should be limitations on that. But if you have a SWAT standoff and you have 15 hostages and you have the ability to fly a drone up and try to get some intel that would help either save lives inside that situation or the police officers that are going in, I don't have a problem with that. Restrictions on how it's used and when it's used and things like that would be very important. And I know the Sheriff's Department has a drone program, and I know that it's very restricted, not only by the agency, but by the federal government on the use and how it's, in fact, they don't hardly ever use it because of the restrictions. So I don't necessarily have can't say that I'm against drones. I definitely think they have their useful purposes, but I think they should be limited on their uses.
What about MRAPs, something like that, excess equipment coming back from overseas, and police departments?
And again, I think that's something that I wouldn't, be against, as long as the equipment coming in was gonna be used for the good of the community, the best interest of the community. If it would save our taxpayers a lot of dollars to have some equipment brought in that could be very useful to that agency without us having to make a purchase and use local taxpayer money, I don't have a problem with that. Do I want restrictions from the federal government on the use of it? No.
Okay. You've outlined in your answers to the questions, what I'll say is a lot of changes that you anticipate for Precinct 1 Constable's office. You use terms like transforming, redefining, and so forth. You've not actually worked in the Constable 1 Precinct's office itself, even though you have a lot of experience in Precinct 3. You'll be coming in sort of as an outsider with your own management style, your own agenda, and so forth. How do you think that that's going to work, and how will you get the existing staff to be on board with you?
Well, that's a good question. As far as Rusty Fincher's coming in after me, and he is actually the captain at Precinct 1, and so he obviously has either the loyalties of the employees there, or if he doesn't have the loyalties, because I know the large majority of them think he's a great guy, but he's not a leader. He can't improve that department. But they can't come out and say that or publicly support me or another candidate because, he's their captain, and that's just, even though they're civil service, they're still, you gotta be very careful. You don't wanna end up sitting in the property room, 8 hours a day with, with no windows because you didn't support the income. So there's things that can happen, so they're gonna be very careful. But as far as the majority of people that I have talked to in private, they're very excited about having some new leadership in the office, and I think that the majority of those people that work there want to do a good job. I think they just need a little bit of motivation and inspiration.
Okay, good, thank you, John.
Okay, we're a little over 30 minutes into this, so we've got roughly about 10-15 minutes.
I'm only 25% into my question.
Or yeah, I'm running.
Not coming back.
I'm running real low on questions, so as a matter of fact, I will kick it over to Ken.
Okay. Going back to the drone issue. Currently, the court systems do not allow, FAA does not allow private entities to use drones for their daily business operations. So why should the police force be able to use a drone, a technology that the general public does not have access to?
Well, I think that the FAA is currently in the process of revising all of those laws, but the truth of that is, if a private business used it, the FAA is not enforcing anything with it. If a business, in fact, you see them all the time, because there's no way, the number of drones out there, the FAA is not going to, unless it turned into some huge negative publicity, all over the evening news, the FAA is not going to enforce whatever they're doing with their drones. So I think they're more restrictive of law enforcement right now than anything. So yes, I agree.
I think Amazon might debate you.
Well, but that's why that's fixing to change, right. I think. But no, I don't believe that they should get any more latitude than the citizens. I mean, no, if law enforcement has a use for it, it needs to be very restrictive. And like I say, that's a gamut of things. But as far as should they have any more abilities or access to those and the use of those than the normal the citizen that's out there that wants to play with the drone and record them for his business, absolutely, I don't have a problem with that. I think that should be fair.
Okay. Law enforcement, 23 years. You only look about 23 years. But anyway.
Thank you. Hey, I like him.
But that is quite a few years. So could you explain to me what are your favorite parts of law enforcement and your least favorite things that you really would rather not be part of your job jar?
Well, that's a great question, and I have to say that changes from time to time. I mean, there's, like right now, I pretty much provide services to the courts. When there's a big felony, capital murder, we prepare that and have that ready for trial. And there are days when I say, ugh, I'm ready, can I go patrol? I just wanna go hit the streets and get out of here, you know, so it depends on, you know, what's going on and how, you know, you wanna go back and do the fun, what you call the fun stuff sometimes instead of the administrative portions. And that's the great thing. If you look at some of the constables out there, Constable Gable, Constable Hayden, they are working constables. They don't just sit in the office 8 hours a day in their suit and tie. They go to work with their guys, but they still manage their office, they still handle their budget issues, and they still provide a great service to the community. They don't, you can't work every single day out patrolling with your guys just because you hate being in the office. You have to be flexible. And so that's the great thing about, especially where I'm at now. I mean, I have a lot of ability to go. When I want to go serve warrants, I can go serve warrants. If I want to go, you know, out and meet with the public, I can do that. So unless we have a big capital murder trial, then I'll be in court. But so I have different favorite areas at different times. You know, like I say, you don't want to just sit in one for too long.
So you're more type 1?
I'd say so.
So what are you gonna do? Give me an idea. What's your plan from day one? You walk in the first day if you get elected. What's Constable Ken Franklin gonna do from day one on?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would go in there and meet with every single employee, one-on-one, and give them an opportunity to openly speak with me in a fair environment where they don't feel threatened. I'm not going to go in there and clean a bunch of people out, get rid of a bunch of people. Like I said, I think the majority of the people there want to do good. They just need the motivation to do it. And if there's standards and practices in place that hold them accountable, then they're going to have to do good. And then after that point, if there's some that are just, you know, Constable Gable did a great thing when he came into our office. When under Tim Holyfield was great. He had a big heart, couldn't fire anybody. And some people needed to be fired. Well, Constable Gable came in, he gave everyone 6 months to ship up and get it together and follow the new procedures. If they didn't meet the flexibility or the accountability of his office, they knew that. It wasn't a question, you know, do I get to stay or not? It's, are you following the rules of this office and providing the service that you're supposed to? And so that would be the same thing. I wouldn't go in there and just say, okay, you 10 people, you know, this is what's happening. It would be, I would sit down and listen to them and see does it mean I'm going to do everything that they want to do? Absolutely not. But I think listening is sometimes more important than talking. And so we'll see what needs to be done, what we can do to improve starting on day one. I don't know, their standards as far as their policies and procedures aren't up to spec on what a true law enforcement agency should have an in-depth policy and procedures manual. If you don't have boundaries for people, then they don't know when they've crossed them. So that's where we would start.
Okay, and so with that, we got a little late start on the clock, but so I'll take advantage of that.
Okay.
Executive privilege.
Executive privilege. What else besides meeting with everyone and kind of laying out a menu of ground rules? What else would you do? I mean, is there? Would you put in a place like competencies and try to get everybody's training up to snuff? Yes,
training is very important. I am a certified police instructor, and so we would definitely look at all the personnel history there to see who has to, I mean, some of the people there may have a great strength that's not even being utilized. And we would look at that as far as, you know, what the strengths of each individual employee are, and then go forward in training as needed. And then decide where our office is lacking in certain strengths, and maybe, you know, move some things around to adjust, you know, for that lack of weakness, or for that weakness that they have. And I can't really say, like right now, for instance, their mental health division. Their mental health division, I know, is not being handled in the manner in which I would handle it. I think that right now it's kind of set up where if they get a transport for a mental health patient, there's a certain group that have the training and the qualifications for mental health officers that get to choose whoever's on call that week to transport, and it's an extra job paid by the county to that person. I don't think that that's very efficient for the county, for one, and I think that when it ends up being all their top brass that says, oh, I get to go make $200, you know, this afternoon off of every mental health case that comes in, I don't think that that's appropriate. I think that division should be set up It's an in-house division, it should be handled by in-house officers, and we'd have to see who has the areas, the strengths, or who we need to train to get brought up to par on that.
So mental health division, I also noticed you mentioned you worked in lots of different divisions.
Mm-hmm.
How many employees are there of the Constables Precinct 1?
35 is my
35.
understanding right now.
So 35, and how many divisions are there?
Oh, well, there's the canine division, well, and when you say canine division, patrol, there's a patrol area, they have a motorist assistance program, they have the Lake Marine Division, the school district, and then the mental health. And then they have a canine division, but canine is really incorporates into, you're not gonna have a canine unit that's all he does all day is canine, running, narcotics, whatever. They also serve, they should be able to serve civil process, they should be able to patrol when they're not needing to execute the dog on something. So some of the divisions can incorporate into each other. I mean, one officer assigned to this division should also have the abilities to cover into this area. Everyone should be able to serve civil process. I mean, if you only have 3 people serving civil process, and then, for instance, like the deal yesterday, where the lady's trying to have her receive her process, and you only have a mental health officer on duty, or you only have a lake, and no one knows how to serve it, I'm still a little bit shocked over that. So, but as far as being able to do multi areas and cover multi areas. Now, the school district police, no, we're not going to pull them out and teach them how to run the lake. Absolutely, that's not going to happen. But there's some specialty areas that would stay the same.
Right. So I understand the school district, that's a special task that's been assigned. Right. The Lake Division, that's a special task that's been assigned. I think in your interview, you also, or your questionnaire, you also mentioned criminal investigation division.
Well, no, I've overseen our criminal investigation at Precinct 3. I don't know that they actually provide an actual task a person to do that.
I guess what I'm struggling with is, if the constable's office primary mission is to serve papers and things, why do they need a criminal investigations division or a canine division or these other activities that may seem to be more appropriate for the sheriff's department rather than constables?
Well, and I agree with that, honestly. When I first started out at Precinct 3 Constable's Office, we didn't have a criminal investigations division. We served civil process, and then we had a few little contracts with the MUD, the Motor Municipal Utility District off of Rayford and all of that. But as far as criminal investigations, if you have any, for instance, Willis ISD, if they drum up a criminal investigation, they can't just pass that off to Conroe PD, because like Willis High School, Conroe PD is that jurisdictional area. You can't just call Conroe PD up and say, hey, come take this. It's going to be up to them. So you're going to have some area of criminal investigations division to follow up on certain things. Lake patrol, you get criminal investigations off the lake. I know that sounds a little odd, but you still can. And so you're going to have some people who are capable of being able to complete a full investigation. Now, homicides, capital murders, anything of that nature, they shouldn't be, if they respond to it, it should simply be to immediately get there and secure the scene for the safety of the community, not to complete the investigation on. I mean, that's definitely should be handled by specialized people with the extensive training at the Sheriff's Office. Major crimes, they have that.
Okay.
I have no time. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Question number 11.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Transparency being the key word in question number 11. And you've given what I would call the textbook answer, the typical answer that we see, and that's not what I would be wanting to hear.
Okay.
For instance, I can go online for Hewlett-Packard, for Amazon, whatever. All sorts of information is out there, freely available. I don't have to submit an open records request. I don't have to make a personal visit to the office or anything of that nature. When I'm talking about transparency, that's more what I have in mind. So, for instance, case numbers. I have the misfortune of being on the victim side of a case on the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office file. Why shouldn't I be able to go on the internet and be able to research what's the status of my case, my file, my claim, things of that nature. Checkbook. Okay, you can go on, you can get financial records or police statements and breakdowns of a lot of public agents or charitable organizations, you name it. Why is there not more accessibility to that type of information freely without open records requests or anything of that nature?
Well, I think part of the problem with the individual county agencies being able to provide that or just post that information online is the restrictions of Commissioners Court that have set standards in place on how certain information is to be obtained through the county attorney's office. So I think that that's something that would have to be, they kind of try to regulate how that works now. And they do that, I know, in the best interest of the county for liability reasons and things like that. But as far as just basic information, a criminal investigation, you do not want to release certain information on that for several reasons. I mean, if the juvenile's involved, if there are, if it's a pending investigation and that could interfere with the case, or you don't want someone to be the suggestion that they've committed a crime when in fact the investigation is not complete to prove that they have. So you have to be very careful about that. To me, that's more of a victim's right than the law enforcement's protection of information. That's more to protect a victim of a crime. But as far as being able to access certain things and the budget of that office, I think that information should be posted free and clear right now. If you want to go through and pull up the Precinct 1 budget right now, you would have to go through, it's on there, but it's not readily accessible. And I think that every county agency should post their full entire budget and things of that nature, their expenses, their expense reports and things like that, that should be readily accessible to the public at all times.
What is available seems to be more suitable to an accountant rather than the average person off the street.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. So if you, no one knows what line item number 32 stands for.
Right.
So yes, that needs to be, it should be received by each office, like the treasurer's office and all, they should have that available to each constable, and then they provide it to the public in a sense that's understandable to the public.
Okay.
Online's fine. I have no problems with online.
Okay, thank you. John?
Okay, anybody else have a question?
Okay, well, I mean, you didn't raise your hand. Okay.
He was quick on the draw over here.
Yeah.
Whoa.
We've already discussed, the primary functions of the constable's office. You've got the additional lake patrol and so forth. Do you believe, to the best of what you have seen now, that the utilization of personnel in each of those areas is the right balance, or do you think there's some rebalancing that is needed there?
Well, I think that there is going to need to be some rebalancing, but I wouldn't want to jump ahead and say, oh, this division definitely has too many people, because I would have to get in there and see firsthand after evaluating. There's a lot of things you look at, not just number of people and the stats numbers. There could be a variety of reasons that I may think the stats are too low, but there's a whole lot of other areas that I'm not understanding until I'm inside and see exactly what's going on. So I wouldn't just immediately say some of those divisions have too many people. As far as the top heavy brass, I can immediately say that there's too many of those.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, that should about wrap it. If you want to go ahead and do your closing and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that every constable's office in Montgomery County and Harris County in Texas, they have, a certain responsibility to provide a certain service to the public. I think that the constable's office in Precinct 1 deserves, the citizens deserve more than just the basics, and that means every day they should be receiving service from that agency as a whole, not just the constable, but all the way down to the line level deputy. They should all be wanting to serve their citizens, and that's what they go to work for, that's what they put the badge on for. They should be doing that job. There are 5 other candidates in this race. I don't want to say anything negative. I have a high level of respect for every single one of them. I think they all offer a unique skill. They bring something special. I don't think any one of them have the culmination of skills and experience and background that I have. Even out of the 6 of us, there are only 2 of us that even worked at a constable's office. And again, I don't want to say anything negative. I think Rusty Fincher is an upstanding guy. I think that he's reached the point in his career when he's exceeded any further abilities to the community as far as being able to serve to the needs and move that agency forward. Super nice guy, so that's why I have a lot of respect for him. But I think that if you look at my background, you look at my history, my skills, my experience, the way that I live my life, it's not just about coming out here and saying, oh, I'm a great police officer. I also have, committed to my community, my family, and I live my life every day like that, not just hoping to be leading something. I want to work beside all of these people and do something good for our community. And I hope that, when you look at my background and my experience, you agree with me.